Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. We are here on site in New York at Legal Week, and we're recording our second of 2 episodes today live and in person. As we do every episode, we have 3 different segments. We'll start with our AI ahas, something we've been using AI for that we find particularly interesting. Our What Just Happened segment, where we bring in something that's happening in the broader tech landscape and share it with our lawyer audience and connect some dots about what it might mean for legal. And then we dive into our main topic, which today is about the recent benchmarking reports that the independent agency or organization VALS put out last month to measure the efficacy and accuracy of different legal Gen AI tools. So let's kick it off with your AI aha for this edition, Bridget.
Yeah. So my AI aha this week, I'm going to tell you about using AI with somebody who hasn't used it. I don't know, I sort of feel like it's the only way to convince some people is to show them. So I was with a dear friend who I adore, who is on the faculty at a T14 law school. She had just finished writing what seems like a really important paper in about eviction law and how it's different across different states. And there's some pretty interesting differences. And she was telling me about it, and she had a bunch of students working on it with her, and it definitely is an important contribution. And while she was telling me about it, I had my laptop open because we had been doing some internet shopping before that. And I had DeepResearch up, and I started asking DeepResearch the question that she and her students had worked on. And DeepResearch, of course, asked me some follow-up questions. I asked my friend those follow-up questions and answered them to DeepResearch. And then 20 minutes later, I showed my friend what DeepResearch did with her research project. And she was basically stunned, started calling out to her partner and couldn't believe what she had seen. And it's an AI aha moment because it's a reminder to me that sometimes, and I know you have some of your friends who basically have broken up with you because of how much you talk about it.
Yeah.
But talking about it, I think, is losing it. It's not nearly as effective as showing somebody something that they themselves spend time on and what it can do. And so I don't, for some people, just pulling it up and getting a subscription is just a barrier that they're not going to cross, and so showing them can make a difference. So, I don't know if you've had that experience lately, but it was pretty amazing, her reaction.
Yeah, I mean, DeepResearch, I know we've talked about it before, but especially if you're an academic,
yeah,
I mean, this is just 20 research assistants on a silver platter for you to look up anything you're curious about and then help you shape some research around it.
Yeah, just at the start of a project as an academic, I don't know how you could do without it. Once you see what it does, I don't think you start another research project without brainstorming with DeepResearch at the front end.
Totally. And to the point of my friends who are no longer my friends because I talk about AI so much, when I think I texted you maybe when I got DeepResearch, that was my moment when I was sort of you know what, I'm off the persuasion.
Oh, that was when you decided you're I'm not doing that anymore.
I don't need, no, I'm going to use this as a cheat code to
get ahead in the world.
Leaps and bounds ahead while people are still I'm not signing up for this subscription.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hopefully get my friends back and also just be putting out amazing research papers, I assume now.
Yeah.
It's not something I ever did before. But my AI aha is also helping somebody else see this. And as you know, I used to work for city government. And I have a lot of friends who still work for government and public interest organizations. And actually this came up on the Ezra Klein podcast that came out a few weeks ago with the top Biden AI advisor.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, the interview was basically, why aren't we paying more attention to what's happening in the world of work and learning and doing something about it? And during the interview, Ezra Klein said, well, did you ever think about dropping these questions into Claude?
Yeah.
And the guy, and I don't know his name, forgive me, but he said, well, we didn't at the government have access to Claude.
Yeah. And Ezra Klein was like, well, that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. He said, I think that's kind of damning, don't you? I think it was exactly how he said it. And I remember being in government and not being able to have access to things, and like everything was firewalled off. And yet I think there are so many applications in public service for these technologies.
Yeah.
So I was talking with a friend who was trying to roll out like a new initiative, and all the things that go along with it, you know, preparing a press release, preparing for a press conference,
Yeah.
thinking through the objections that the public might have about this, and helping you both think through it and also respond to them. And he was just sort of like, I just don't have the time to do this. I know that it would help people, but I said, let me introduce you to my friend Claude.
Yeah. He'll help you.
He'll help you and you could go enjoy your day. I said, ask Claude to help you draft a press release and give it a little bit of context, but you don't need to give it much. And he told Claude about the initiative he wanted to start and why it would help people and, you know, what the goals were. And of course, for him, the first time, for me, the millionth time, like Claude just perfectly drafts this press release. And he was just amazed because it had drawn from the web, I guess. Yeah. Maybe we did it in ChatGPT too, because it would have been connected to the web. But it had brought in things that the city had done before.
Wow.
That were tied to like mayoral priorities, like all of these things that a very nuanced writer in a press room would do. And then I said, ask it to draft you talking points, like for a news conference. Did it? I said, ask it to take the position of a cranky reporter that does not like what you're doing. Did it? I said, ask it to draft it in 8th grade reading level equivalent. Did it? And then I said, well, you want to get the word out, so create a social media calendar with different ideas for different platforms and have it roll over a 30-day period. Did the whole thing. It was so much fun to watch his face, just like...
Yeah, see it work. Yeah.
See it work.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, it's fun when you have people that are not so skeptical, but just like...
But just having they're busy or, their day job doesn't allow them to do it, so they're just not doing it yet. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And it's like you start seeing the wheels turning of like, oh, I could do so much more for so many different people. And we've talked about this maybe in our last episode, that a lot of times people who work in the public interest have an idea that you're going to like let AI loose on the most vulnerable, like the highest stakes situations. Because I think there's a lot of fear and headline grabbing stuff about it. But there's so many sort of lower stakes, time consuming things that you can get done.
Yeah.
So that was my AI aha.
There was a story going around Blue Sky this weekend about some academic who was sitting next to a student on a plane, a long flight. And the student was feeding a research assignment into, I don't know if it was ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, to get to have it, help or produce a first draft of the answer to the research assignment. And then the student spent the rest of the time putting it through some tool, which I haven't experimented with, I didn't even know about it, that strips it of any, AI signals, so that it can pass any AI, screen that a faculty member might have. And the student was like working over and over again, like putting it through and making changes and putting it through, and finally got to the point where it passed the AI fraud screening test. And this faculty member was like sort of critical, like can you believe the student spent all this time like figuring out how to like cheat her way through this assignment? And I was like, or is she like really prepared for like the jobs of the future, because she's like figuring out how to use like the technology forward and back and like sideways. And also, by the way, we should tell her that you could build a bot pretty easily to like do what you just did, like, and she could have been watching Netflix.
Totally.
But she could have been watching Severance and figuring it out.
And then helping ChatGPT understand it. She could be serving us in so many ways.
Right. But I was like, no, she's actually just preparing for the future. She'll be fine.
Well, Hard Fork, great podcast. They had on a sophomore from Columbia who is applying to be a programmer, right?
Yeah.
Engineer.
Well, he was.
He was. He's got a whole new now game
he's an entrepreneur. Yeah.
He's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But he was applying to all these major tech companies, Amazon, Google, Meta, all the big ones. And I guess in that field, there's an assessment test that you go through where you're logged into a platform and there's somebody watching you on video to make sure you're not cheating. And you like are tasked with solving these different problems.
Yeah, coding problems, I think, right? Like, yeah.
And he would concede readily that he developed a technology to cheat on the exam where it basically uses generative AI to do the task. And also it sort of tells you the answer in a way that doesn't make your eyes move.
Yeah.
So you can fool the person watching you into thinking that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how, like, did he just share this openly? He tried to sell it, right? So he was not hiding it.
He did it. He used it himself and then offered it to other people, other students applying for these jobs, and had like a lot of take up. I mean, he himself then, like, once everyone figured out he was doing it, his offers were rescinded, although he's since then had every single company call him and offer him a job, because of course they should. But he's got like all these, I mean, his point was it's a stupid test. And so a stupid test sometimes needs a stupid shortcut. I think that sums up his pitch, right? That it's just like, it's no longer like a relevant way to figure out if somebody's going to be, add value to your tech company, this like, anachronistic test, which sounds a little familiar, doesn't it?
A little bit. I might have been thinking of some similar assessments in our own industry as I was listening to that.
Yeah, totally. But he was fascinating. He was like, they were like, what does your mom think? He's like, she just found out a week ago.
She probably would have told me not to do it.
She would have told me not to do it.
My favorite line from the whole interview was when they asked him like how he's feeling now, and he said like, my company just made $200,000 last month and we're on track to make $2 billion. And Casey Newton said that's about 1 year's tuition at Columbia. Anyway, so you're better off. I know, and it just sort of, I don't think, I'm going to say for a fact, like it's like, I don't know it's a fact, but I know it's true, that professors have no idea how much is taking place on the technology of the students in their classroom. And until this technology was available, we've all said different things are stupid and we shouldn't have to do them. They don't actually do what they say they're doing. But now there's a technology available that allows people to actually figure out how to cheat around it. Yeah. And this guy's just being really open about it. Yeah. But your plain example is, other people are not. And yeah, the world is changing though. And those people are developing skills that will set them apart in some way, like so far ahead.
Yeah. I mean, they're the ones that are going to be like running the companies in a few years. So yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I loved that story. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the plain example, because that brought that story out. Yeah. So our What Just Happened segment is trying to tie to the legal profession some things that you and I follow in the broader landscape and what they mean for legal. And of course, we constantly talk about Ethan Mollick on our podcast because he's just prolific and really interesting and great and thoughtful. He's a professor at Wharton. You should follow him on LinkedIn if you're not already, or social media. But he and his colleagues just published a research report called The Cybernetic Teammate, a field experiment on generative AI reshaping teamwork and expertise. This research was designed to sort of test how generative AI would impact teamwork and across different functions within an organization. So do you want to summarize kind of what the researchers did, Bridget?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, you probably had already read about it when I texted it to you, as I'm wont to do on the weekends when I'm catching up on things. But Ethan wrote about this research in his Substack, his most recent Substack, and I read it and was like blown away, because it's something that I think I can apply right away to our teams at the Triple. And yes, of course, we already did. We already built this experiment. But so the researchers worked with 2 teams at Procter & Gamble. I think that it was an R&D team and then a BD team, like a commercial business development team, to explore the different ways generative AI can make a difference across a business. And they had the participants work on real product challenges, I believe. They were, individually or sometimes in 2-person teams. Some of them had the help of GPT-4 and some didn't. And then they just collected data across the different teams in those different formats. They were cross-functional. They combined the R&D teams with the commercial teams. And then they measured 3 outcomes: performance, like just how well they solve problems with, in the different team structures, whether they could bridge knowledge across specialties. So they called it expertise sharing, whether it made a difference, and then how they felt about it, kind of emotional reaction to the work or to performing the task. And, maybe not surprisingly, it turns out that AI makes a difference along all of those metrics. In performance, the people using generative AI performed at levels equivalent to teams that were without AI. So if I'm an individual and I team up with an AI, I'm going to perform at least as well as a 2-person team or a multi-person team, and that also AI replicated other aspects of team performance. Productivity is like a not surprising one, obviously, but innovation was another one, and I think Ethan has showed that in a bunch of other research as well, that it's a big boost to innovation. In expertise sharing, the teams that had AI, they effectively bridged knowledge silos, and so it was apparently a way to balance out a team when you were missing some kind of expertise, a shortcut kind of. The social engagement, the emotional impact was super interesting to me. That the participants who used AI reported greater positive emotions. They were more enthusiastic, they were more engaged, and lower negative emotions, less anxious, less frustrated, which actually all of that totally checks out for me. Than the participants who worked alone on their own without any AI teammate. So super interesting, I think, across the study, and lots of takeaway for the legal professions. But before we talk about those, was there anything else about it that you think is worth mentioning before we sort of think about how it might matter for legal teams?
I don't think so. I mean, I keep finding this positive emotions thing really interesting.
Yeah.
And we could talk more about its implications for legal, but it also is consistent with my experience, especially the frustration piece, right? Because if you are trying to marshal human beings to do some of this work, it's not even that you're angry or anxious. It's just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like our AI ahas. It's so magical to be able to work with an AI. But it also echoes that other study that we talked about at the University of Minnesota, where the law students reported enjoying using it more. But I'm conflicted about this because I also would have loved for some artificial intelligence to have done my work in law school.
Totally.
But that's the point when you're in law school, is to not really enjoy it because you're working and expending energy.
But is it the point?
I don't know. What is the point?
So that's the thing. I'm not sure. I mean, I know we have all these long held beliefs about what the point is about how we do legal education. I'm just no longer completely confident about any of them, to be honest with you. So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, I like that. That's going to be a whole other episode.
Yeah.
What is the point?
Yeah.
We should add that as a segment.
We really should.
What is the point?
Yeah.
Much like the kid at Columbia.
Yeah.
And I'll take a page out of his book and be transparent that in preparation for our podcast, I took this study and plugged it into both Claude and ChatGPT and said, what are the implications of this for legal professionals and for junior lawyers in particular? And a lot of the things that came back were things that you and I have talked about before, right?
Yeah.
Like leaps in capabilities among junior lawyers, and the AI rightly identified, what does this actually mean if you're able as a first or second year to do the work of an 8th or 9th year lawyer? How are you developing? But the thing I found most interesting that I had not really focused on was this idea from the study of cross-functionality on teams. Mm-hmm. So they had somebody who was on the commercial side selling products for Procter & Gamble and somebody on the technical R&D side in these different pairs of teams. And I think the research found that in all cases, there was crossover expertise that was created by using the AI. So the commercial teams were able to sort of deploy R&D expertise and vice versa.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT and Claude both said in a law firm context or any practice context, this might mean the dissolution of barriers across practice areas. So you no longer have on a matter, your tax attorney, your real estate attorney, your M&A attorney maybe it's one attorney who's able to leverage AI across all of these different disciplines.
It's kind of Back to the Future, isn't it? Right? And like there's sort of like the legal profession became specialized, and we all like got good at doing that one thing. Like, I'm a tax lawyer, or I'm a regulatory lawyer that works just in this one area, right? We have all these like specialists across the profession, and I guess that made sense when, the law is so opaque and hard to manage, and when you have like significant risk, if you're a business that really has to get something right, like you want the specialist, right? You don't want the generalist who is the town lawyer who can do your will and also represent your kid if they get a DUI, and they can do your taxes probably, or at least give you that tax advice because they do everything. They're the lawyer down the street. But like maybe the lawyer down the street actually has a business model again. Like I think that's great news. Like I don't know. I mean, it might be better for like your quality of life to just be a general practice lawyer, and also if you can really give your community good advice, like maybe you can go live in that like rural community where you can set up a shingle and make a difference and also do it competently. I don't know. Are we Back to the Future?
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. And I mean, even for our own happiness, like you're saying, it's like the research from Marty Seligman at Penn and is it David Epstein who wrote Range?
Yes.
That we're naturally wired much more to be like that than these hyper specialized things that we do.
Yeah.
But it feels like if you go back to that earlier thought around this might be so delightful to interact with because there's less friction of like having to find somebody to help you with something. Maybe that's part of the reason those specialties emerged, because you can go to your tax lawyer in your firm and there isn't that friction of like having to get up to speed. They just already are. But now what is the point, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't necessarily need that. But I like the idea of solo and small practices being able to just totally expand their service offerings, which is amazing. And maybe we can start to push back against some of that creep that Bill Henderson has been talking about since the 70s of moving from people law to corporate law only.
Yeah.
It also, the AI, when I plugged this in and asked it for questions to consider, asked relatedly, in addition to dissolving the barriers across practice areas, does this change the makeup of legal teams in terms of seniority in a law firm and the way that junior lawyers are developed? Like you wouldn't just be a litigation associate now working with only litigation partners.
Right.
Maybe you're an associate who works with a team of AIs and a team of partners across all different disciplines. And your job is to figure out how to marshal the AI.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like another like great opportunity for creativity if you're a law firm like willing to think about like how to completely restructure your business model and both and also your training model and your lawyer formation like content. I mean, it could be like I think it's a super exciting time to like lead a legal business right now, given all the possibility.
Also, our last episode, we talked about all the opportunities for education in this space. And it seems like there's huge opportunity in the PD space. I came from PD world, and there's not a ton of breakthrough innovations in that space in terms of just like something this transformative. So there's huge opportunities there. And as we've talked about so many different times in so many different places, that handoff point from law school to practice is so clunky and poorly designed and misshapen. There's just huge opportunity, I think, right there.
And like we talked about in the last episode, you don't have any of the constraints in like PD content that law schools do have. And so again, tons of upside potential. I mean, yeah.
Got to get Sharon on the phone again.
Yep.
If she's in the Jeep somewhere.
Sharon.
The last sort of thing that the AI raised, and this is something we've talked about before, but you mentioned the positive emotional effects. And I thought it was interesting. Again, it's just one of those moments where you're like, it's so nuanced in its understanding and its ingestion of all this stuff, because it clearly ingested a lot of information about how anxiety prone junior lawyers are because of the way that they're trained. And that was definitely me. I was terrified.
I was that way first year of law school. I mean, I read that finding and I was like, this would have been like a game changer for me, just showing up to civil procedure where I was terrified because it seemed like everybody else understood like what these rules were and why they mattered. And I was like, why are we talking about these rules? I had no lawyers in my family. I had never been to court. I went right to law school, and I just didn't understand the context, like I needed like the big picture background. And I would now, like, before I went to civil procedure, I'd be like, okay, I don't understand why I'm reading this case. Like, what does this rule mean? Like, can you give me the background information that I should have had if I came from a family of lawyers or just had some like legal culture around me? And I would have been a lot more like, I had a lot of anxiety in first year of law school.
Oh my gosh, please. I was a mess. Ask anyone who was around me. And it was because it was like this hide the ball thing of like, eventually you're going to have this breakthrough. Hopefully it happens before the one set of exams that you get to take that determine everything in your future, but it might not. And like, I wouldn't even go to study groups, which was the number one piece of advice.
I was too embarrassed because I thought I didn't know enough.
It freaked me out. So I would sit down with these kids that were the same age as me. They seemed to be human like me. And they would say these things. And I was like Fragile Frankie from Seinfeld. Like, I would just go back to my room and be like, this is it. I'm on my own because I don't know what they're doing. Yeah. And then you'd go up to the law library and your kind professor had put like a sample exam up there from last year's class.
That didn't help at all.
Made it so much worse. I was like, now I left this study group and now I'm going to look at this exemplary piece of writing from somebody my own level and I don't even know what's good about it. But imagine, even without like transformations in education and all that kind of thing, like just taking the sample exam and uploading it to Claude and saying like, what is good about this? Like, walk me through this. That is actually how it should be. To the extent that we think that that's a good way to test people, which is for our other, what is the point? But like, I'm going to go full on and say like, maybe I would have enjoyed law school if I'd had these supports. Maybe not. I'm getting too excited. But when I got into law firm practice, it was, I think law school was harder for me, but law firm practice was scarier, I think, because the partners were so scary. And now that I know a lot more about law firm business models, I get it more. Like, they had to keep their clients happy or else they would not be able to make a living.
For sure.
And they're trusting you, first year associate who couldn't even figure out how to use a study group to help them with something. And they're
You're not qualified at all.
I actually had a professor say that to me. You are completely unqualified for the job that they're paying you lots of money to do. And I said, I know I am. I'm not trying to assert that I am. But they're also like not great mentors by and large. They're not trained to mentor. They're carving out time from their billable work to try to develop you in a system that's never taught them to develop anybody.
In a way that they've had no help like learning how to do.
So this did like stand out to me of if we could find ways to support junior lawyers and law students in feeling less anxious and more engaged with the material and like less focused on their own anxiety, we could actually help them unlock superpowers of their own. And I don't really think we need to do much other than raise awareness to them, which they probably already have if they've listened to that kid at Columbia. Right?
That there's a great shortcut.
Totally. Totally. So I thought it was an interesting study. It keeps reinforcing a lot of the themes that it elevates performance, that it reduces anxiety, and has some really interesting implications for legal. So I'm interested to hear from your experience internally too, what you all are finding out as you go.
I'll definitely report back. I'm excited. It'll be fun.
Okay, so our big topic for today is a new report out last month from VALS, which is an independent organization that assesses uses benchmarks to assess the performance of different legal tech tools. And so this was one of the first places I've seen a report really independently evaluate the performance of various platforms that we've all been hearing a lot about.
The first time we've seen it in legal. Like, interestingly, Ethan Mollick and his colleagues have been doing this with businesses like since like ChatGPT came out. Businesses are like, yeah, come on in, let's figure out if we can do things better. And same with medical, right? Like we've talked before about the medical studies where even doctors are like, all right, let's find out. Like, let's find out if we work with an AI or sub it out to an AI, whether they do better on diagnosis. And they're like writing it up, even when it makes them look bad. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, but it took us like this long, even though.
Why?
Well,
we're special.
We are special.
In what ways?
Special ways.
All the special ways. I mean, it's like, Well, we can't do that because we have privileged information, which...
Or we can't do it. I've heard this a million times. We can't, there's nothing to measure because everything is bespoke. Lawyers think like every single thing is bespoke, which always makes me think like, well, what do we teach in law schools? Do we like, we actually can't teach you the law because everything is bespoke. So
the work
we
is
can't,
mysterious and important.
It is mysterious and important. Yes.
Also, when you're saying bespoke, it's making me think of my first year in law school when a professor kept saying bespoke, and I had no idea what it meant. I thought it had something to do with bikes, like spokes.
It means fancy clothing, I think. That's what that's how
bespoke suits. Yeah. I think I also had some classmates with bespoke suits as well, which also confused me and stressed me out.
Yeah.
Because I was going to JCPenney for sure. Where were we? Oh, yeah. Benchmarking.
Yeah. So Vals, I'm sorry. No. First we've seen in legal, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, and we were talking before we started recording that I'm sure that the tech companies in legal have been doing this behind the scenes for a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
But no lawyer, in a regular practice context has ever looked at a benchmarking report for legal AI or legal tech. Right. So it's kind of like, we'll get to this in a minute, but it's kind of interesting that we're all like so focused on these benchmarking reports. It's a little bit cracking me up at how we're slicing and dicing them as though this is something we regularly do. Like nobody looked at Lexis printouts and assessed them as a lawyer. So anyway,
no one compared the Westlaw key sites to the other key sites.
Could you imagine?
Like, are these
like,
keys?
Here's your Westlaw case. Here's your Lexis case.
Yeah.
This one has 72.3% accurate, and that one's 72.4%, and everybody freaks out.
Right.
That never happened before.
Nope.
Nobody ever did it. They just accepted it.
Yep.
So the report really measured the performance of 4 different platforms: Harvey Assistant from Harvey, Co-Counsel from Thomson Reuters, Vincent AI from VLEX, and Oliver from VecFlow. Lexis Plus AI was an original participant, but withdrew from the tasks. So they worked with, the researchers worked with several law firms, Reed Smith, Fisher Phillips, McDermott, Will and Emery, and Ogletree Deakins to develop some tasks for the AI to be tested on. And all of the AI platforms performed these different legal tasks, and then they were measured on different criteria, including data extraction, document Q&A. Oh, these were the tasks: document summarization, redlining, transcript analysis, chronology generation, and Edgar research. And then they were assessed on their accuracy at performing those different tasks. And then there was also this other category of human lawyer baseline. So VALS partnered with an organization, an ALSP, alternative legal service provider, Cognia Law, to source independent lawyers to also do these tasks and be measured as a benchmark group. And
that's kind of like the super interesting thing about it, right? I mean, I'm really grateful that they did do that. Otherwise, just comparing them against each other and not against the human lawyers is sort of not that interesting.
No.
But that
I
makes
almost don't care about the AI benchmarks
Yes.
as much. To me, the big takeaway were the lawyer baselines.
Same. Yeah.
So what did they find, Bridget? What are the different performance metrics across the AIs and the lawyer baseline?
So, I mean, we can talk in detail about like how each of the legal AI tools performed across those different tasks. But the truth is, like, they all performed pretty well. And I think the most interesting finding is they performed slightly better than the human lawyers in most of the not all, but most of the categories, which didn't really surprise me because I am a human lawyer and I use these tools. And I am not at all surprised that the tools were able to perform better than the human in many of these. And the ones that it didn't also didn't surprise me. I mean, there were a couple of places where a human lawyer still outperformed the tools, like reviewing a contract and like redlining it. And I think my guess is that's probably because the human has a better understanding of like what exactly you're redlining for. Mm-hmm. So I mean, my first reaction was like, I bet you could train that tool to do better and better and better. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the tool is not going to be hungry. It's not going to have the like biases that humans just have that we bring to the table when we do a task, and I don't know, not going to be tired and like all of the things that like you can't get out of humans. Like the humans just have those problems, or benefit, whatever you want to think about them. But that was I think the big takeaway was, we have to now start talking about as opposed to what, as Andy Perlman puts it, right? Like Andy Perlman always says, like, as opposed to what? As opposed, what do we have right now when you're comparing these tools? I don't know, were there other specific performance metrics that you thought were worth mentioning or important takeaways?
I mean, like you said, you could drill down into any one of these and say Harvey had 75.1% of data extraction and CoCounsel had 73.2%.
Okay, they're both good at that.
Yeah, they're both very good at that.
Yeah.
To me, the big screaming headline is lawyers are not perfect.
Yeah.
And
that's a surprise.
I know. Who's going to tell them? I don't want to be the one because based on the conversations I've had over the last 2 years, this is going to come as a huge surprise. Like, this is the assumption of every conversation I've been in. We cannot trust these tools. We are alone the ones who are perfect and unflawed.
Yeah.
And already less than 3 years into this era, just around 3 years into this era, like, we're basically on par with these tools. And like you said, in a couple of these cases, probably if you programmed them better, they would perform exactly where we are.
Yeah.
And they're going to get better.
Yes.
We're not, like, as a species.
Well, I am.
You're going to get better.
No, I'm not.
But
really.
the species, probably not.
No.
At least not before I retire, I would imagine. So to me, that was just like the big, huge takeaway and the most useful piece of data that I'm including in every presentation I do now of, like, guys, we are very, very flawed and imperfect.
Yeah.
And they're getting better, and they're pretty much where we are.
Yeah.
There were a couple limitations in the study that they struggle with complex legal judgment. Like you said, the redlining and the contract modifications might require human nuance, or they might require some programming.
Fine-tuning.
Yeah. Hallucinations were still a challenge in some cases with some tools. And the performance depended on document type. It worked best for structured text-based legal tasks instead of broad, open-ended legal research, which kind of surprised me.
I think that's more about the particular tasks that were measured. I think I really appreciate that we have this research. So no criticism, but as you know, that one of the things lawyers need to do is sometimes think of creative solutions to problems. And that's hard to measure across, like in a test like this, where you're literally giving someone 75% or 78%. Because I don't know how you, like, it's such a subjective thing, but that's one of the places where the tools really, excel.
Yeah.
And we already know excel beyond humans already. Right. So.
And then after the report came out, there was a whole bunch of social media commentary. One of my favorites is from one of my favorite thinkers anyway, Jason Barnwell, who's in the general counsel's office at Microsoft. And he had a few takeaways that align with some of what we're saying. Like, flawed, and I'm going to quote his post here. Flawed premises we are too comfortable with include the following. That was not part of the quote. Presuming human work is always flawless. This is my favorite part for law firm lawyers, and they should listen up about this. Presuming accuracy and precision should not be considered with speed and cost in evaluating value.
Yep.
So in other words, like, it would be great to have this 100% accurate, but I don't want a lawyer spending 20 hours on it. I'll take 95% accuracy and get it in 5 minutes. I would prefer that.
Yep.
And presuming our choices are human intelligence or machine intelligence.
Yeah. Like, we aren't always using both, right? I
right.
mean, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, one of the other questions I had after the report came out is, for how long will we be in this era of even benchmarking these things at all? Like, I feel like pretty soon it's going to feel a little silly and beside the point. Right?
It's funny. I mean, it does feel like it matters a whole lot right now. And at least, like, for us at the AAA, when we're building point solutions or more AI native processes, we feel like it's really, really important to stakeholders to show them the accuracy levels. So we have, as you know, like, pretty sophisticated governance, like, principles and practices, and we feel like we have to measure and make it transparent, because that's the way you bring people along. But I was talking to a investor recently here at Legal Week, actually, and he was saying, like, when they're trying to like sell a business. He like buys and sells businesses, and he's trying to sell a business, and there's like some dispute holding up their measurement of like what the business is worth, and it's going to take 2 years to resolve it, or worse, 6 years if it's in court and not, arbitration. He's like, "God, I don't really even care. Tell us tell us we owe this amount or that amount. We don't care. We just need a number and we need it resolved so we can like move on with the transaction." And I was like, "Oh God, you don't care? Like if we get it, don't you want us to get it right? Don't you want us to get like the actual, like what the value of the dispute is right?" And he's like, "No, I want you to get it done." And I was like, "Oh boy. Do I have to like rethink what that means?" I still think it's important for the legal community and it's important for us at the AAA because we're a nonprofit and we like want to do this like really well. But it's a pretty interesting perspective that's not everyone involved with lawyers has the same values, the same things the same way, right?
Yeah, that's like another one for our What is the Point segment.
What is the point?
And I probably have told you this story before, but I remember early on in the AI era talking to this lawyer who was talking about how his clients hire him because he has an edge to his writing.
Oh.
And I was thinking, like, do you think that's why your clients hire you for your edgy writing? Like, they can go to the airport bookstore and get like some Stephen King if they want some edgy writing. I think they probably hire you to solve, like, they don't want to hire you.
Yeah.
They want to be moving on with their businesses and their lives. Like
they would like to never hire you again.
Yeah. But it so much of it is just like this fundamental beginning premise that lawyers are like the most important part of every pursuit involving the law. When really, like, a lot of times we're the irritant.
Yes.
Involved. Yeah. Because of that framing.
Yeah.
And we could be the facilitator of a lot of really cool stuff.
Yes.
But that makes total sense to me why at this point in the development, the benchmarking is really important to show that you're doing it the right way. Yeah. But I wonder 5 years from now if it's just...
I think it matters while we're in the horseless carriage shaped like a horse phase. And then when we can just like build the carriage that looks like a carriage and not like a horse, then maybe, people will have moved on a little bit. Yeah.
They need like those training wheels now for a little while.
Yeah.
And something in me really believes that once these benchmarking assessments are all clearly superior to human lawyers,
then people they won't think they're important anymore.
We'll use the AI for some things. My other favorite part of this study was this one graph on accuracy versus response length in a document extraction exercise.
I mean, honestly, that graph should like be this. We should have that graph in our slides. Like
it should be like the logo for our podcast.
Yes.
It's
gonna be. I'm gonna have to take a snapshot, but it's gonna be a meme that I will just send you once in a while. I think.
Please do.
Yes.
Yeah. Anytime you get a really long message from a lawyer, send me this chart, which shows that the AI are essentially on par with us in terms of accuracy by and large, but the response length for the AI was around like the 2,000 to 3,000 character limit, and the response length for lawyers was almost 16,000 characters. So we're saying the same thing with 8 times as many characters.
Yeah.
We're so precious. We are very special.
Yeah. It's really hard to say things with fewer words. Like, it takes a lot more work, Like, the only thing I like better than a 2-word sentence is a 1-word sentence.
Ooh, you're making me think of Severance again when Mr. Milchick had to
grow. Yes.
Sorry. Hopefully everybody who listens to this watches Severance.
Well, they will have to.
It's going to totally
You'll
go
have to
over
catch up.
everyone's head.
Yeah.
Don't worry. You won't understand it even if you watch it.
Yeah, good point.
You're not any further behind. Well, I thought it was... a super interesting study, but really like my big takeaway was it says more about the humans than it does, or as much about the humans as it does about the AI.
Which maybe was the point. I don't know, but it's certainly a like very valuable takeaway. So I'm very grateful for us having it.
Same. And you are the one who is always saying that for, I'm paraphrasing you, so correct me, like for a profession that's really focused on evidence and proof.
Oh, yeah.
We do not actually study most of what we do and whether it's effective.
We don't seem to care about like measuring our own effectiveness. Yeah.
Because we're very special.
Yeah.
All right. Well, really interesting research. We'll keep sharing reports that are coming out. I used to lament that there was going to be a day when we'd have like this whole architecture of reports and case law. And because the first time we taught our class together, there was like nothing. It really was the wild, wild west. And we could just use podcasts and
great.
all this stuff. And I knew a day was coming where it would become more rigorous. But actually, it's really fun now that it is.
Yeah.
Because you get to actually support a lot of the things that you feel on a gut level with data.
Yeah.
And the data really are on the AI side.
So far. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, any other concluding thoughts?
No, but it's great to do this in person again.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this again.
Yeah. Back on the couch, back in the sneaks.
Yep.
For sure. And special thanks to our producer, Aaron Tran, for setting us up for success today.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron. You're the best. And it's been great to talk with you, Bridget. Great to hang out at Legal Week. And thanks to everybody listening. And we look forward to seeing you on the next edition of 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. Thank you for tuning in to 2030 Vision, AI and the Future of Law. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Stay informed and inspired as we continue to explore the AI-driven future of the legal profession. We'll see you next time.